I've always worked the night shift. It's quiet. It's peaceful. No one around to interrupt your thoughts. No distractions. Just you, the empty hallways, and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. But this one job, this one place, made me regret ever choosing the night shift. It started with a phone call. A friend of mine worked at a small, almost forgotten hospital on the outskirts of town. The kind of place that time had moved past, a relic of an older era. The place had been operating for decades, but in recent years, the patient count had dwindled. They were closing down most of the floors, and only a handful of staff remained. They were desperate for a night security guard, and my friend asked if I could fill in. The pay was decent, and I needed something steady, so I agreed. The first night was uneventful. The hospital was cold and quiet, the halls dimly lit by flickering lights. The receptionist had already gone home, and I was left alone to patrol the building. As I walked down the long, empty corridors, I couldn't help but feel a strange sensation. It was like I was being watched, but every time I turned a corner or looked over my shoulder, no one was there. The hospital had a certain weight to it, old, creaky, with peeling paint and rusted metal. The smell of disinfectant and something faintly rotten lingered in the air. Every room I passed had that same eerie silence, as though they had been abandoned for years, even though I knew people still worked here. But it wasn't until my third night that things started to feel wrong. I was sitting at the security desk, watching the monitors. The building was still, the only sounds coming from the soft hum of the equipment and the occasional creak of the old building settling. I was about to head down the hall to check on the other floors when I saw it on the monitor. A figure. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then the figure moved slowly. It was standing by the door to one of the rooms on the second floor. A man tall, with a long overcoat, his face obscured by the shadows. I couldn't see his features clearly, but something about him sent a chill down my spine. I grabbed the flashlight and headed for the stairs. I hadn't been told about any late-night visitors, and the place was supposed to be empty. I felt a strange mix of dread and curiosity as I ascended the stairs, my footsteps echoing through the hall. When I reached the second floor, the hallway was completely silent, the lights flickering weakly above me. I checked the room where I had seen the figure standing, but it was empty. The room was dark, the curtains drawn shut, and the bed neatly made as if no one had ever occupied it. I scanned the hallway, but there was no sign of the man. Maybe it was just a patient who had wandered off, I thought, but that didn't explain the overwhelming feeling of unease that hung in the air. I headed back to the security desk, my heart racing. But when I got there, something was wrong. The monitors were all static, flickering. I reached out to adjust the dials when suddenly the power went out. The building was plunged into complete darkness. I stood there in the pitch-black silence, listening. A low whisper echoed from somewhere down the hall. My skin crawled. I wasn't alone. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam of light cutting through the darkness as I hurried to the nearest exit. But before I could reach the door, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure, standing in the corner of the room, barely visible in the shadows. It was the man from the monitor, but now his face was visible, and it was wrong. His face was pale, gaunt, almost skeletal. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and unblinking. He grinned an unnatural, twisted smile that stretched far across his face, like it was about to split open. And then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, he whispered, "You shouldn't have come." I stumbled back, my mind racing. My first instinct was to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like the air around me had thickened, pressing down on me, suffocating me. The man's smile widened as he took a step forward. "You can't leave," he said. Before I could react, the building shook. The lights flickered back on, and for a brief moment everything seemed normal. But when I looked up, the man was gone. I stood there, frozen in place, my heart hammering in my chest. I quickly ran down the stairs and checked the exits, but they were all locked. The entire building had been sealed off. The windows were covered with thick bars, and the doors wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The whispers started again, this time louder, coming from the walls, from the vents, from the very ground beneath my feet. The man's voice echoed in my ears. "You can never leave." I ran through the halls, desperate to find a way out, but the building seemed to stretch on forever. The corridors twisted and turned, leading me in circles. Each room I passed seemed to change, becoming darker, more distorted. The air grew colder with every step, and the whispers grew louder, more frantic. And then, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me, slowly at first, but growing closer with every passing second. I turned around, my flashlight trembling in my hands, but there was no one there. The footsteps stopped, and then I heard a voice faint, but unmistakable. "Look behind you." I didn't want to. I knew what I would see, but I couldn't help myself. I turned around, and there, standing in the doorway, was the man. But now he wasn't alone. There were others, dozens of them, all with the same pale faces, the same twisted smiles, their eyes empty and dark. They were all staring at me, and the room seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with their presence. "You can never leave," they whispered, their voices blending together in a chilling chorus. I ran through the halls, my mind racing. But no matter how fast I moved, I couldn't escape. The walls seemed to shift, leading me back to the same hallway over and over again. I could hear the sound of their footsteps, the whispers growing louder. And then, I realized the truth. The building wasn't just haunted, it was alive. It was feeding on me, on my fear. The man in the overcoat, the twisted figures in the hallways, they were its inhabitants. Trapped like me, forced to stay in the darkness forever. I don't know how much time has passed since that night. All I know is that I'm still here, still wandering the halls, still trapped inside this nightmare. The building watches me, the whispers never stop, and every night, I hear their footsteps behind me, and I know, deep down, that I'll never escape, because the building, it never lets anyone leave.